So how did AIM House come into being?
Great question. AIM House came into being. It's an interesting story actually. I had worked in therapeutic programs from the time I graduated from high school. Even previous, when I was in college, I drove a school bus for the Expand program here in Boulder. And what I learned working in great therapeutic programs, both treatment facilities and therapeutic boarding schools, was that we could do a really good job when we had young people sequestered, so to speak, and they didn't have the choices around them that you have in everyday life. So you're in treatment, you don't have access to chemicals, you don't have access to your tech, you don't have access to those kinds of things. So they get better, they get a lot better, they get a lot more pure. Parents would say things like, thank you for giving me my kid back, this is how I remember them, and that type of a thing. But then they would leave, even sometimes after being in long-term programs, they would leave and the world would be pretty overwhelming to them. And so it seemed to me that there needed to be something after that actually practiced being in the world, going to school, getting a job, doing the real life type of stuff. And it literally came to me in a dream, which is, I'm not one of those kind of mystic people that everything comes in a dream type of thing. I've had one or two in my life, that were really profound, and that was one of them where I kind of saw it in its entirety and then never looked back. Just started AIM House. We set on a little brochure saying, come in January 2000. Kelly Korn, who some of you might know, helped me set it up, and we sent it out to some people that we knew, and we were really fortunate that immediately there were a few educational consultants who had faith in us and sent us our first 2 participants. When they first came to tour, we didn't have a facility yet. I didn't know where they'd be sleeping. So it was very much seat of our pants. It was high on vision, low on planning, but we learned as we went. And I'm still in touch with those participants today. And so we had 3, initially 1 and then 2 and then 3, and we had 4 for a period of about 5 or 6 months. No, not that long. It was more like 90 days. And then we quickly outgrew that and we moved to an apartment just down the street from where we're sitting right now, and eventually took over that apartment complex. We had a loft area where we would serve meals. We had group in there. It was just a big loft. People would walk down the alleyway, come over there for group, walk back. It was nice to be downtown. It was nice to be centrally located. But once the first participant came, then it was off and rolling. We've had a participant in our care ever since.
And why did you choose Boulder as a place to have a transition program?
Well, Boulder offers tremendous beauty, first of all, tremendous opportunity. You have an excellent university here at the University of Colorado, but you also have alternative universities like Naropa, which speaks to certain students a lot more. And vocational opportunities. So there's especially 20 years ago, it was a much smaller town. It's grown quite a bit, but for a small town, it had everything that you could get in a larger city for the most part. So we really wanted to be able to teach people to live in the real world. So, and it still today, some people are like Boulder, and it's a progressive place and there's so many influences going on. My answer to people is really simple. Like, do you want to learn how to live in the real world? And if you're a parent, do you want your kiddo to learn how to live in the real world, or do you want to kind of isolate them and then throw them to the wolves and learn it on your own? So to me, it's made logical sense, but it's been a more challenging way to do a program. No question about that. We've had to make a lot of adjustments as we've gone, and we keep a pretty tight container on the residence itself. And when someone first comes in, their freedom is a little bit more restricted, and we slowly kind of do that over time to the point where eventually in our program they're out in their own apartment and living fully on their own independently.
How do you feel like AIM House has evolved over the last 19 to 20 years?
Oh, wow. Well, so much. Like I was saying earlier that, we had a great idea and a ton of heart and really clear vision, but we had never had the experience, nor was there really anybody to look to go after. I had great mentors, but most of those were in primary treatment or therapeutic boarding schools. So there weren't a lot of models for doing this in this type of a setting. So we had to very much learn as we went. There were a couple other programs, but none that were in a town like this. And so we had to learn as we went, right? Like, so you just make adjustments by what you're doing. Our philosophy has always been, let's stay open, let's learn, let's keep evolving our program, because even today, we're making adjustments. We'll have ideas. Someone will have a great idea, and we let that idea win on staff. Say, that's a good one. Let's try it. So you try different things to make it work, and safety's always been the number one priority. We have a nice track record with that, and so we've just over time we've learned how to what are the right amount of groups, what are we looking for in a mentor, what's that relationship look like, how does that interplay of freedom and structure work together, and we tinker with it from time to time. The basic structure remains pretty similar, but our technique varies and changes. In our training, we try to stay up to date in training with the latest information.
How has the profile of a participant in AIMHouse changed over time, over the last 20 years?
Yeah, well, when we started, there really weren't young adult wilderness programs. So today, the majority of our participants go through a 30 to 60 day, sometimes longer wilderness experience before coming to AIMHouse. But in the early days, people were coming straight from home, straight from college. So it was different. They hadn't been through as much emotional work. They hadn't had that period of time where they were limited to choices and were able to kind of clean their system out, both from technology and from drugs, alcohol, whatever else might be going on for them. So the profile shifted in that way. The field of young adult treatment has grown so much that we have a whole lot of different specialized programs now. So early on for us, it was more just okay, kiddo's struggling, great, send them to AIMHouse, right? So we had a lot of variants. Some of those people had substance use issues. Other ones had anxiety issues. It was kind of all over the map in different ways, different levels of functioning. But today, I'd say the biggest shift really has been that, we see more participants who are working with anxiety issues, we definitely get more mental health issues than we do strictly substance use disorders. It's a hybrid. We want it to be. We don't ever want AIMHouse to be just one thing. You got to stay in your lane. We don't accept everybody. We know who we work well with and who we don't, but we like a diverse community. And so if you're going to have a diverse community, you really need to be able to, manage the culture in a way that you say, okay, well, these issues are working well at this time, and we can work with that, and then we can work with some of these other pieces as well. But it's just staying very awake to that and being super forthright with people as to what the community is currently looking like, because it ebbs and flows.
Each participant is assigned a mentor. What does the word mentor mean? What does the role look like? What does it mean to be mentored and to be a mentor?
Well, how I look at it is that sometimes people get therapist and mentor confused, right? A therapist, well, you didn't ask me about therapist, but I'll talk about therapist first. Therapist is really somebody who you're able to work through your resistances to, talk about maybe how the resistances came to be, how some of your more disturbing behavior patterns and thoughts and feelings came to be. So you're excavating and you're looking at it, and then you're putting it in a current context and trying to kind of understand it from where you are now. A mentor knows that. Like at AIMHouse, our mentors and our therapists we talk as teams. We know the issues. We know, what they're working with. But a mentor really is much more about action. A mentor is more about, okay, that's your story. I appreciate that that's your story. Let's create a new story. Let's start something different today. And what does that look like? So I also have said before that a mentor sometimes needs to loan out their eyes, right? So when I'm working with a young person, I can see all this potential. I can see this other side that if they could just get out of their own way and show up for some things in life, they would reap the benefits of that. So they don't see that initially. The people, a lot of the clients that come to us, their identity is very much wrapped up in what the last couple of years look like on a downward spiral. So, it's kind of about protecting their courage. It's about restoring their courage in a sense and inspiring them, but in a realistic kind of feet on the ground way. So it's in the early days, I just said, we got to love them enough to get them to the next place. I still believe in that, but the definition of love and what that looks like has evolved and changed. We have a fantastic program director right now, Matt Sullivan, who coined this phrase, accountability is love. And so the way that we love is different. So holding you accountable could be the greatest, part of love I can. So what we're trying to do is hold people accountable to the highest version of themselves. So the mentor's job is really to push when appropriate, relate when appropriate, but they're not really doing a whole lot of, well, how does that make you feel? And why does that do this? Like, let's show up for life, let's create a new story. The resistances that come up, talk to your therapist about that, let's work through it. But I'm gonna hold you accountable today to the intentions that you came in here to work with.
I've heard you say before, I was an expert parent until I was one.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that experience?
Well, so many things in life, until you actually do it, you have an idealized version of what that looks like. So I was the guy sitting on airplanes, control your kid, and because they're making noise or kicking my seat and interrupting my flight, But also in a more tangible way, I used to just think it was a black and white process. Like, well, your kid's this way because you did X and you did Y, and if you would just practice good communication skills and all that. Well, now I'm a father of 4. And I struggle. I yell at my kids sometimes when I know better, and I wish I was more emotionally regulated. I've learned the importance of repair. I've learned the importance of being a human being and being humble. But most importantly, as a parent, I've learned the skill of being accountable. And I admit what I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. I might know it for you and be able to give you really good advice, but when I'm in my own power struggle with my kids and kind of dysregulated or frustrated that the room isn't clean, I often revert back to old behaviors, not sort of my highest consciousness and not some of the things that I know. So it's been on-the-job training for me. It's given me, now being a parent for 20 years, I've been a parent as long as I've owned Namehouse. And so there's been sort of a parallel process there. But I see very much that nobody has this down. Nobody knows how to be a great parent. The best thing you can do as a parent is just stay in it, stay in the relationship, stay in the relationship, stay in the relationship. Put up some guardrails. Some of this is trial and error, and understand that your children are not they're not your children. There's this great line from the prophet that says, our children are not they're not our children, they're the world's children. And I really believe that. I have 4 children, they all have completely different personalities. And so my job as a parent is to really honor that and to help them be who they are, not who I want them or think that they should be. And it's challenging, it's really challenging work, but I grow a lot. I mean, my children have been my greatest teachers by far.
After 20 years, there's a lot of alumni for Aimhouse now out there in the world and the community. Can you speak to the role that they play in our current community and the communication you have with them still?
Well, it's the greatest. I remember them struggling. I remember them just having a flicker of hope that they could actually achieve and do things. And now there's so many that I stay in touch with and talk to who they're parents and they're working and they own homes and they've participated in life, and some are doctors now, and we have lawyers and we have construction workers, and we have it runs the complete gamut according to where they're at. Some are musicians on the road playing music, so it's the greatest. It keeps that flame burning to want to continue to do the work and wanting to make Aimhouse as great as it could be, because I can see the impact over a continuum of 20 years, and well, not quite 20, but close. And it's a remarkable experience. It's the greatest thing. And so we have some who work with us now. That's a great joy when that happens. And it's usually the people who hated the program the most when they were here, and then either had Stockholm syndrome or for some reason had to come back. But no, I think they felt like they feel a connection to the place that they want to be able to share, and they want to give to others what they received.
You record a weekly podcast down here at Made Life.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, it's a blast. It's fun. We've done a few. So Matt and I, we've done, Matt's interviewing me.
Hey,
we started with an NFL podcast a few years ago, and it was a blast. And doing that with participants was a lot of fun. And then we have a great studio down here. So part of my journey has been, I've been really great at helping other people discover the things that they want to do. And my own kids said to me, like, Dad, why aren't you podcasting? Like, this is what you love to do. So I've committed to that. And so on a weekly basis now, I'm doing a thing called the Wise Guy Podcast. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully we can throw a little banner up there that how you access that podcast, but it should be up on iTunes by the time somebody sees this. And just talking about things that I'm interested in. You know, I rant a little bit about questions that people will ask me that I've been asked for years from being in the field. And then I oftentimes have some guests on who I really respect and admire.
Earlier I heard you talk about creating new story.
Yeah.
Why is that so important for young adults in transition?
Well, first of all, you know, if they live a full life, this is a fraction of their life. If you actually look at young adults who come to us anywhere between 18 to 30 even, right? 17 to 30. Their definition of themselves is kind of wrapped into a couple years of bad choices, a couple years of maladapted coping skills, a couple years of downward spiral. But that's all it is. So, you know, by the time you're 50 and old like I am, you realize that those are only pages. They're just pages in your book of life. And so what I'm most interested in is, sure, you have to work through the roadblocks, like I talked about. You got to sometimes figure out what's holding me back, what are the things that are in the way, what can I not afford to leave behind, right? I like this idea of like Michelangelo when he was asked how he made David. You know, he said, I just took away all the parts that weren't David, right? With a chisel on a piece of rock, which is remarkable and very understated. But his point was there were parts of him that weren't him until he appeared. I love that metaphor for this work. And so that's what I think that we're doing here. And so hopefully you're chiseling away some of that, but creating a new brand identity for yourself, creating some things that you're good at and that you know and that gain confidence in yourself. And when that starts to happen, there's a momentum that comes with that reverses that whole downward spiral thing.
When people come to AIM House, they're coming into a transition and stepping down from somewhere else. And then there's that next step down into the community. Can you talk a little bit about Manifest and about Evolve and the ways that we support people in moving out into the life after treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, similar to what I discovered early on when I started it, that people were coming out of, you know, sequestered environments and then needed to, you know, be part of a real world. What we discovered was that our continuum needs to look like that as well, because our residential program at the Castle and Shannon's house, it's very safe. It's a very safe environment. There's staff 24/7. There's plenty of people around. There's curfews. There's all of these pieces. But we see the program really being an entire year of transition. So you come in, spend 6 months, you know, in approximately, give or take. If you need to be there longer, fine. A little shorter is fine. But then you step into the community where you're actually renting an apartment. You're living on your own. You start cooking, doing your laundry without anybody telling you to. And sometimes those things happen smoothly. And a lot of times there still needs to be a level of support. So oftentimes those participants will still see their therapist they've been working with. They'll work with a Manifest mentor, and the mentor will come into the apartment, spend some time, relate to him directly. But it's just a gentle, warm handoff to, you know, more support, but in a much more independent way where you're making more of your own decisions. So it's a segue, it's a continuum of transition. That's really what we've established here.
If I'm someone who's gone through a similar experience in a residential program and feels like they have the skills to be able to work through that, is there any way to move more into that community service or community space, or do I have to go through the residential program?
So what we've experienced over time is that some people still need a level of transition and support, and they've already been through other residential settings, or they just, in their own development, they don't need the intensity of, you know, the Castle men's program or Shannon's house. But they still need support. They need kind of what we do on Manifest for others in their own way. So we've launched the Evolve program. The Evolve program is where you come in directly and live on your own, renting a place, and we customize services for that person. So what that looks like in real time is we might have somebody who's a great musician. We've had several of these. Who's a great musician, has had some success with that, but has never gained the traction to actually establish their own SoundCloud page, you know, put their music out onto iTunes. Maybe we've had people who've wanted to go into graphic design and have some great skill, but have never sort of been held accountable and mentored directly to do that. So we pair people up with community mentors people who are actually out in the world doing this stuff. We do that here in this space called Made Life. And we hold people accountable to what their dreams and aspirations are. And that's often part of the Evolve program. And there's an academic track with the Evolve program too. People want to go to school, they want to get back into school, they're going to the University of Colorado, they might be connected with the CUCRC that we work with here, but they need some support still. They need to see a therapist, they need to work with a mentor who holds them accountable. They might need a tutor who they check in with on a weekly basis, regular basis, in order to really establish accountability for the skills that they need to be successful in school. So it varies from person to person, but that's the beauty of Evolve, is that we can customize that exactly for what that individual and that family needs.
So the phases, and the phases across the whole program, across the whole year.
Yeah.
They spell out I am me.
Yes.
Was that intentional?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, the phases actually were, so AIM was the first thing.
Yes.
Actions, intentions, merge. But actually, before the program started, I was job doodling, and I thought, well, intentions, actions, merge. That's great. Well, that spells I am. Well, that was a dog food, I think, I am or something, and I just didn't feel like it was very marketable to have a program called I am. I think it's kind of cool now, and it's 20 years later, it might pass, but I don't know. But it was a little bit too on the nose. So I was playing around with the letters, May and I were, and it was like, oh, AIM is in there. That's great, AIM's great. Sort of aim in a direction, right? That'll work. So AIM was born. So those were the first 3 phases that we really identified. But then as we saw people go through this year of transition, go from being in the castle to moving out on their own, to going to school, working a job, paying their bills, doing all these things, what we realized was that there were more distinct phases to that. So in addition to intentions, actions, merge, which is more or less in the house now, then we have the manifest program. So you're manifesting in the world all this stuff that you've been talking about, all these things, skills that you've been building. It's time to manifest. It's time to bring those into focus. And then Evolve is the never-ending phase. I mean, we all need support at various points. But we thought Evolve was a great name really for this other level of service where someone's not going through traditional AIM House, but rather having a customized community-based program.
After 20 years, what gets you excited about working with young adults?
Well, a couple things. I mean, I still actually love working with young adults. Sometimes I get tired of the business parts of things, and sometimes things will feel like Groundhog's Day where you're out answering the same questions again and again. But there's 2 things that keep me really excited. One, we have super dynamic, awesome, new, young, talented staff. And so I'm mentoring staff now as much as I'm mentoring participants, probably a little bit more, and I love it. I have an infinite amount of energy for mentoring. Business stuff and looking at other things and numbers and all these other things, that gets tiresome sometimes and it doesn't hold my interest very long. But I still love mentoring. So I love mentoring staff. I love seeing new ideas of a new generation taking AIM House to the next level. It's super fun. That gets me going. And then the other thing is I have a relationship with all these alumni. So I'm seeing the results of what they, I talk to alumni on a regular basis. So I'm seeing the results. And when I see that, I think, gosh, what else am I going to do? There's no better way to spend a life, is to help other people. And that's really all I ever wanted to do, is be able to make a living, have my own family, and be able to help other people. And so I'm successful. I'm successful at that. I don't have other types of career goals like a lot of people do. It's just kind of like do the next indicated thing based upon helping people, and thus far it's worked out.
I appreciate you bringing up the idea of success. Because one of the questions I hear a lot is, what is your success rate? What does it mean to be successful coming through a transition program? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's tough. We are doing more quantitative studies now. So I'm part of a wonderful group at the University of Colorado where we're actually going to put together a more formal study. But you have to, in my opinion, you have to evaluate from a holistic point of view. Okay? So when you're working with young adults, you are going to experience various forms of relapse, right? If someone's been depressed for a long period of time, there will come periods of time, both while they're in the program and afterwards, where depressed type energy will come back, or anxiety will come back in a big way, right? If someone's suffering from a substance use disorder, relapses aren't uncommon. What's important about it is how you deal with it and how you relate to it. So I think we're incredibly successful just in terms of, you ask most families and participants, are you better off since you came to AIM House, was AIM House a good experience for you? Not everybody, you're not gonna bat 1,000, but the vast majority will tell you, yes, I'm better off now than I was before I came there. So that's sort of how I define success in one way. The other one is just in family relationships. So when I speak to families, in particular parents, and one of the questions I like to ask them is, your relationship better, with so-and-so today than it was before? And I like hearing them say yes. And most of the time they do. Sometimes while they're in the program, they'll say, well, not really, because we're struggling with some stuff. And I say struggle's real, and we work through these things, and there were probably struggles before you got here. So, my viewpoint on this stuff is, it isn't black and white. I think when I was younger, success looked like one thing and it looked a particular way. Now I look at it as quality of life getting better and developing coping skills that help me survive, help me thrive in the world. And I'm seeing a lot of that these days, and it makes me really proud. My wife, May, and co-founder of AIM House, started Made Life a few years ago. And Made Life is the space we're currently sitting in. And Made Life was really designed to be kind of a campus, a creative campus, and a place to come do things outside of being in a program, right? Because if you're doing it all at the house, it's kind of like, you're just doing it as a program thing. It feels like a class or like arts and crafts or something. But when you come into a different setting, it's more business-like, and we're downtown, and you have to leave the place to actually come here. Well, we have this big, great studio in the back, music studio. We have a place called the Black Box, which we do a thing called Creative Recovery every week, and open mic nights and all this stuff. So it's very much a community space. We have artists put up their work and do shows from the community. It's our sort of give back to the community in a way. That's one thing that it does. And the other important part of Made Life is that it's a creative accelerator program. And what that means is, a lot of people, myself included, with podcasting, for example, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to continue to do it. But unless you're held accountable to it, it's easy to have life's demands give way, take precedent over your dreams and the things that you want to do. So Creative Accelerator Program is a way of putting front and center, no, these are things I want to accomplish, I know that I'm good at, I want to make that happen, but I need support to make that happen. And that support comes in the way of mentorship. And so Made Life, we have this Creative Accelerator Program where, people who even aren't part of the AIM House at all, or just from the community or have heard about it, have come in here to do 8 to 10 week programs where they just focus on their area where they want to learn more about. That could be graphic design, it could be music, it could be filmmaking, several other things. Anything that you can dream up. Fine arts, photography. We offer all of those things through a Creative Accelerator program here. So it's a very exciting piece of thing. And Made Life has been a big difference, not just for AIM House, but as a standalone, really in offerings that we have for the community.
And if you wanted to do a Creative Accelerator, are there opportunities to get some of that therapy and mentoring support you would get through AIM House without doing
Absolutely. And that's where the Evolve program comes in. So a lot of times people will come here and they'll say, okay, I want to do a Creative Accelerator program, but this is a big new town and I want to get connected in different ways, and I feel like I need more support beyond just vocational or creative support. And so we customize that. Yes, we can get you a therapist, we can get you a mentor, we can craft some wraparound services for you to kind of keep that support nice and tight for you while you're going through this process. So absolutely.
What is Boulder Integrated Health?
Boulder Integrated Health is a new medical detox program and intensive outpatient program, which is meant to serve the Colorado community in ways that both combine the best of holistic care and medical assisted treatment. We do not believe for a second that a substance use disorder is a character defect, is a moral flaw. It goes a little something like this. About 10% of our population has substance use disorders. This is coming from SAMHSA and other research that's been done. Some people think that's conservative, some think it's less. It doesn't really matter. Let's just call it 10% for right now. So 10% of our population has a substance use disorder. There is still a huge stigma in this country. We're talking about a mental health issue and we're talking about a health issue in general. If somebody has diabetes, we do not treat them that way. We say, hey, what do you need for your diabetes? And we'll get you the treatment. If someone has heart disease, we work with it in that type of a way. When someone has a substance use disorder, we view it very much the same way. What's the medical evidence of the best way to detox them? What is the level of support and treatment they need in order to live a life of abstinence? And we use a variety of methods in order to do that. We connect people. Sometimes that means referring them to residential treatment from that spot. Sometimes they can step down into our intensive outpatient program and participate in that on a regular basis, where we're working with the family, we're working with everybody in the current stakeholders in that person's life. But really, the thing that makes Boulder Integrated Health special is our approach. It's this approach that you're not a bad person, you are a person with an issue, a mental health and behavioral issue, not even a behavioral issue, scratch that, a mental health issue called a substance use disorder. And we can help you treat that, and we can work with that in a holistic way. So that's the approach. And basically, we just saw the entire Colorado area is underserved, and in particular Boulder. There was no medical detox in Boulder. So it makes no sense. And we want to be able to do that, and we want the approach to be creating access into recovery, whatever that looks like for you, and making that bridge as smooth with the best referrals and the best recommendations, and looking at all areas of that person's life to move forward.